Andaman Islands, lying between India and Thailand. I pushed off the jagged rocks and entered the smooth, calm ocean. And there it was, the coral reef. Huge spotted fish with sharp teeth, strange rainbow fish with odd beaks, and delicate feathery fins swaying in the sea breeze. And the best thing is that I didn't feel like an intruder. Gliding along the surface, it didn't seem like a single fish cared that I was there. But if I did get a little too close, that fish would immediately zip off before I even got the chance to know what was going on. The reason for these fast reactions is because fish, and I mean all fish, have tiny sensory hairs covering their entire body, which allows them to feel a certain distance from their own body. How does this work? Let's say I stretched out my hand to try and touch a fish. Before my fingers can touch that fish, the water around my fingers moves. And that water movement bends those sensory hairs, which sends out a signal basically saying, "Whoa, there's something coming over, move out of the way now." And in that time, the fish is gone and my hand is kind of just hanging there, confused. These sensory hairs give fish their fast, jagged movements that we're so familiar with. But it's not fish being erratic. It's actually them responding to threats milliseconds before they strike. Chitwan National Park, lying on the southern end of Nepal. As we entered the forest, I heard an air raid siren coming from the village behind us. Our guide told us that a bull elephant with a human death count had been sighted in the area. Besides wanting to ask the obvious question, which was, well, why are we then in the jungle? I decided to ask, so what would we do if we saw this elephant? There's nothing you can do, our guide said. Now my heart was really thumping. I thought of videos of elephants doing their display threats with their ears flared out, trumpeting and stomping as loud as possible. Besides the obvious effect, which is to completely terrify the subject, these display threats can also be used to warn other elephants, some 20 miles away. But how do these elephants hear them? Because these kind of sounds can only travel around 6 miles. Well, while trumpeting and stomping does produce a racket, it also produces ground vibrations. And these travel much further than airborne sounds. Elephants can sense these vibrations by feeling them on the soles of their feet or by the vibrations being transmitted up to their ear bones. Let's just say that I was pretty happy not to have met that bull elephant and perhaps walked along a little bit more gently than necessary, just in case. Pembroke, on the south of Wales. It was dusk, and our school class had gathered at the top of a hill. Our giggling excitement soon faded into silence as we waited and waited. Then, a black and white striped head appeared, a badger. We were all frozen in silence as we watched it undergo its foraging duties. For us, these odd 30 minutes at dusk is the only snippet we get to see in a badger's life. But for the badger, the true dramas lie underground. A network of tunnels and chambers give a real sense of an ancient palace. But for the sake of being scientific, we'll call them badger sets. Some sets can be 500 years old, being passed down from generation to generation, with each generation building their own extension. Such sets can have 100 entrance holes and are highly sophisticated, being built on slopes so that the rainwater drips off and the chambers stay dry, having entrance holes at different levels to allow the air to circulate through the tunnel. And with such great homes comes great pride. Badgers are meticulous cleaners, rotating from each chamber every few days to allow it to air out and any parasites to die off in the meantime. Changing bedding frequently, and when in winter and there isn't much vegetation to choose from, badgers will take their vegetation outside on early sunny mornings to allow them to dry out. These extravagant regimes, in my mind, give badgers a rather royal status. So why have I told you about these 3 quite random stories? We all know that we are in an environmental crisis, and yet the need to act appears slow, to say the least. Why is it that so few people care? The answer, in part, seems to lie in doom and gloom stories. Research has shown that they do not instigate change. And even if they do have an immediate impact, this is likely to be very short-lived. So what do we do? It's a question that's been racking my brain time and time again. And then it hit me. I've been going about it the wrong way. I should have been asking myself, well, why do I care? And it hit me. From an early age, I have seen nature as a place of beauty, curiosity, somewhere I feel at peace. And this has stayed with me until today. In fact, the only wavering I've ever had about being an environmentalist is when we learned about global warming at school. It was presented in such a dire way that I just thought, well, there's absolutely no point of even trying then. Research has shown that creating these emotional connections with nature is the most effective way to create change. For ages, I've been advocating veganism, reducing your plastic, remembering to turn off your light. But the problem is that unless you already care, that's not going to help. Instead, if I can say one thing, it's to get into nature. Whether that's trekking on the rugged Scottish coast, or simply investigating your local park, watching how it changes with the seasons. To just get outside and explore our wonderful world. Thank you.